Hello, let's do Wordle number 953. Today's theme is 90s technology. So I thought I would talk about that for a bit for my ranks grants. I haven't prepped anything, but the 90s were basically my formative years. I was born in 1984, so I was 6 years old when the 90s started. In fact, I was 5 when the 90s started, and then turned 6. So I was between the ages of 5 and 16 during the 1990s ish. And so I kind of grew up with 90s technology. And it's really hard to remember like what we had and what we didn't have, because it all gets mixed around. Like it's amazing to think how cell phones have infiltrated our lives, and especially smartphones have infiltrated our lives to such an extent. It's hard to believe that, that's like mid 2000s, like when the iPhone came out. I don't remember the exact years, but definitely in the 90s. Like, I didn't have a cell phone I don't think any of the 90s I had a cell phone. I think I finally got a cell phone like when I went to college in 2002. And it was like a flip phone. I think we may have had cell phones earlier than that, but I don't think I had a personal one. It's hard for me to remember. I may have had like late high school a personal cell phone, but anyway. So let me go over like just what I can remember in my experience with 90s technology, especially around computers and phones and things like that. So internet wise, we had dial-up modems. So there were various speeds and they kept coming out with new speeds. And so like there was the 9600 baud modems, and then the 14.4 kilobaud, and then there was 28.8, and then they introduced the 56K modems, and that's where it peaked. It never got faster than that for dial-up. And 56K was a bit strange because it was basically 28.8 with additional compression. I don't know the technical details, to be honest, but that's sort of what my understanding was at the time. That like they didn't actually improve from 28.8 to 56K in the same way they had previously improved how data transfer worked. So it was a little bit inconsistent what speeds you got. But the way dial-up modems worked is, this might be very foreign to some of the youngsters who didn't experience that, but your computer would literally call, we didn't have, definitely not on cell phone. You would use landline phones. So, you plug it into the wall and you'd have phone service through landline phones, and your computer would have a modem, and the modem would translate between data and literally audio. So you would dial up your internet service provider when you wanted internet. You didn't have internet all the time. You'd have your modem dial it up. It would consume your phone line while you were using the internet. And it would literally dial it. It would ring. The ISP would pick up, obviously it's computers at both ends. If you've ever done a fax, it's like that. But anyway, and then for some reason the modem would have screeching noises. I mean, this is just the handshake that it would do. A lot was sending data, and that had it was always the same noises at the start because it was starting the connection, and it would play that back to you, I guess, as sort of a diagnostic feature. But so we got intimately familiar with the dial-up sound when it would connect and successfully like do the handshake and figure out how to communicate. Basically communicating, hey, here's who I am, here's what speed I am, blah blah blah. And then you would pay the ISP, and early on you would actually pay by the minute. You get a certain number of free minutes per month, blah blah blah. You pay a certain amount a month, you get this many minutes of online time connected to the ISP because they didn't want their phone lines tied up as well. And then sometimes you had to pay your phone company by the minute. And so getting unlimited minutes on the phone company was also important if you were using internet a lot. So anyway, you would connect that way and you get very slow speeds compared to nowadays. Like most websites probably would take several minutes to load. Like a modern website would take a long time to load at these speeds. So websites were much more bare bones. Images were used, were not used. They were very highly compressed, and they weren't used nearly as much. Certainly not video. You would never go to a website and watch a video on a website. But anyway, let me talk about these ISPs. So we like most people. Again, I'm talking about my personal experience growing up with this tech. We had America Online, AOL, and the thing about AOL is that it was a curated internet experience. They tried to basically duplicate what you could find on the internet through their application. So they had a lot of built-in, I think they called them channels, but I don't actually remember. But they had a lot of built-in sort of categories that you could go to, and you could browse and play. You could play certain kinds of games through their app, and you could join chat rooms. You could instant message people. But then also it had a built-in web browser, so you could browse the web through AOL's browser. But what I discovered, which I'm sure was common knowledge, maybe not, but you could launch Netscape Navigator or whatever browser of your choice, and it could still communicate with the internet. So you would just sort of minimize AOL, and you could browse the internet that way. And so my family, we used internet so much, especially me, but also my sister would want to use it as well, that I actually set up a little LAN. We actually, I just draped very long Ethernet cables between our various bedrooms that had computers, and my computer would be dialed in 100% of the time to our ISP, like AOL at the time, which was pretty fun. So we bought a second phone line just for internet. So we had two phone lines, one for voice and one for internet. That way we could be connected to the internet 100% of the time. And then my computer would share that internet across the LAN so that other computers in our home could share in that internet. This must sound super foreign, that we had to I really had to look into how to do this, and we had to buy the hardware for it and all that. This was not a common thing to do, I don't think, among the vast majority of people. But we did that in our home. So, and then at one point we dropped AOL and we used NetZero instead. NetZero is a kind of a fun concept. The ISP was free as long as you watched ads all the time on your screen. And but the problem is it was very easy to cheat it because you would there were ways to basically hide the ads, if I recall. But anyway, I would just sort of drag the ad off screen or something, and then we'd just be on NetZero all the time, and that was free as opposed to paying for AOL. But anyway, so that's kind of the internet experience that we had for a while. Now, cable internet started getting introduced probably mid-90s. I don't know these dates. It's very hard to remember the dates when you're growing up, but cable was a huge boost in speed over dial-up. And I really wanted cable, but it just wasn't available for our home. They were rolling it out to different regions, and it just wasn't available. And then finally it became available, but it was only one way. You could only download with cable, and upload you would still have to dial in. So you'd still have to do dial-up to upload, but then to download, that would go over the cable. So it was kind of like a hybrid system. I don't actually know the technical reason why this happened. And what's interesting is that cable has just improved and improved and improved, and they've been using more and more of the bandwidth of cable available for internet. And so it's the same cables that was getting us, at the time, faster speeds, but there were limitations in hardware and there were limitations in technology still. And cable is still improving. They're still able to use those same coax cables to do data over the network. Although I think a lot of the cable companies have been just running fiber. Then it's just cable to the home. So I don't know exactly how that's happening now, but so cable modems were being introduced. So that's kind of the internet side of things in terms of how we accessed the internet. Of course, there was a lot more going on than just how to access it. There was a reason we wanted the internet, and I don't think I really have time to talk about all of that in this one little rant. But that's kind of what I wanted to mostly touch on, is how did we access the internet? I guess I could touch on cell phones a little bit, or phones in general, right? Our phones, we weren't always available, and that's the thing, right? So we are always available now. Even back in the 90s, we were not always available to call. And certainly there was no texting. I mean, some people had cell phones, and I think texting really became big in the early 2000s. I really don't think there was all that much texting going on in the 90s, and they were charging per text for a while. And so really it was just, you had a phone at home. You had a single phone line at home that was shared by your whole family. If one person was on the phone, no one else could be on the phone, and it would literally be only voice. And then, a lot of the phones were attached to the wall with a cord, and so you had to be near the phone in order to talk on it. In kind of the mid to late 90s, you started getting the wireless phones. It wasn't cell phones, but it was, you had a base that was attached to the wall, and then you could remove the phone and it had an antenna and it would communicate with the base. So you could walk around the house. But a lot of people, like before then, or even after, like not everyone had cordless phones. You'd have these sort of coiled wires that you could stretch across the house and roam around the house while you talked and get it snagged on things and everything. You've probably seen that in like TV shows and stuff. So anyway, that was a real experience. And then if someone called and you weren't home, you had an answering machine. So you had a machine that after 4 rings, it would pick up and it would start recording on tape. It would play back a message that you recorded, and then it would start recording on tape for a certain amount of time, and they could leave their message. So when you got home, you would check your answering machine, and you would literally rewind it and hit play and see who called. So yeah, that's the experience with phones. And so if I was at school and I needed to contact my mom, first of all, I would have to use a payphone. You'd have to pay. I'd have to go to the street to where the payphone was, which wasn't very near the school. And then I'd have to, put in some quarters, and then I'd have to, you'd know the numbers, call home, and maybe you'd get the answering machine, or you'd have to know what the work number was of your parents and call them at work if they were at work. So basically you just didn't do it except for emergencies or whatever. And of course, if there were emergencies, the school had phones you could use too if you went through the office. But yeah, so very different world, and it's changed so quickly. And even in the 90s, it felt like tech was changing quickly, but it just keeps going. So yeah, I guess those are the things I wanted to talk about. I know I sound old now, but yeah, the world that I grew up in was so different than the world that kids are growing up in now. But still, even then, I was entertaining myself by being at my computer on the internet. So that part has not changed. Just the way I access it and the things I do on the internet are a little bit different. But even back then, like you'd be in AOL chat rooms. Well, today I'm in Discord talking to people on Discord. It's not all that different. So it's kind of interesting. And DMing people, IMing people. It's just the letter's different. Anyway, let's play Wordle. I don't know how long this... I've been talking for a while about this. I could talk forever about technology. So I guess I should cut myself off at this point. But yeah, so let's do the Wordle. So for the 90s technology theme, Anirudh suggested walks for the Walkman. These were tape recorders that had batteries in them, and you'd attach headphones to it, and you could literally walk around and listen to your music on your Walkman. Those were very, very popular. I think were they from the 80s or the 90s? I know in the 90s we had them, but I wonder if they were invented in the 80s. Anyway, and then beeps for beepers, because before there were cell phones, whoa, that's a lot of info. Before there were cell phones, there were beepers, and these would be things that like doctors would have, right? Where you would have it on your hip or whatever, and you couldn't communicate through it, but someone could call a specific number and leave like some amount of text as a message, I believe. Or actually, I don't even know if you could leave a text message. I think usually it would just be, you'd call a number, you'd leave your callback number, and then their beeper would beep, and it would show the number that you're supposed to call back. And so it would be a way of saying, hey, you need to call me now. So like doctors would have beepers, or they were really called pagers, but everyone called them beepers because they would beep. But anyway, I'm talking about technology again. Anyway, that's beepers, pagers. Double E and a B, and the B is not at the start. What is this word? So if the E didn't go at the start, it would be double E here. I mean, I suppose that's possible, but the other option is we do have an E at the start and then maybe an E at the end, or like here. Could it be like, oh, ember? Ember is a fun word. I hope it's ember. It is ember. Wow. Okay. Ooh, okay, cool. Got it in 3. I wonder if there were other options. Wow, ember is an ER word too. This could be a struggle. This could definitely be a struggle word. So yeah, let me know how you did on this one. Let me know if you saw any other possibilities for this. Yeah, 2 E's, but not here. Got pretty limited. A B, not at the start. I wouldn't be surprised if this was the only option. So yeah. Let's spin the Wheel of Themes and see what I'm going to be ranting about tomorrow, and also what the words are supposed to be. Wow, Taylor Swift was just missed twice in a row. All right, skiing theme, suggested by RT Benson. So just leave a comment with 2 words related to skiing in some way for me to start with tomorrow. And of course, if you enjoyed this, why not leave a like, subscribe, and a kind comment below.